Hey there, and welcome back to the channel. I know last week I didn't get a video out. I apologize for that. There's been a bit going on recently here at the house, so kind of wore me down when I had time to make videos, and otherwise it kind of ate up my time. So sorry I didn't get anything out last week, but I'm here now. And I've got a new topic for today, and that's high intensity interval training, otherwise known as HIIT. What that is, basically, you can do it. It's mostly used with cardio, running, bicycling, ellipticals, etc. But conceivably you can use it for like weight training and other things, but it's primarily for cardio. Basically, the name kind of defines itself. You're really going at things at a high intensity for short intervals. So say you wanted to do it for weight training. What you could do is a combination of things. Say you were doing bicep curls and you were using 10-pound weights. So you do, say, 10 curls with the 10 pounds. Then you would go and grab a heavier weight, say 20 pounds. Double your weight, and do maybe 2 or 3 curls of that, and then go back to the 10-pound weight, do 10 reps there, and go back and forth for each set. Another thing would be combination. Say you do your 10-pound bicep curls at a slower rate, so a lower intensity. Then what you could do, grab the 20-pound weight, and with the weight, do faster reps. I mean, as fast as you can if you're not used to or accustomed to doing 20-pound weights. Now for cardio, and this is what I do with HIIT training, is and a lot of machines automatically have programs put in for HIITs. My treadmill that I have at the house doesn't, but basically what I do with HIITs on my treadmill is I will, say, start off at 7 miles an hour and go at that speed for about 2 minutes or so, and then ramp it up to 9 miles an hour for 30 seconds, bring it back down to 7 miles an hour for 2 minutes, and then back up. You do this so that you get your heart rate back down, but only for a short amount of time before you bring it back up to a really high heart rate. And this kind of works your muscles so that you get used to higher intensity. So if you're like a runner or a bicyclist or anything like that, it's good for basically speed training. Like 7 miles an hour is about my low end average for running. 9 miles an hour I can only maintain out on the road for a very short amount of time. So going back and forth like that can help bring my speed out on the road up by working like that. But basically it helps get your muscles tuned to higher intensities so that you can keep pushing yourself a little bit farther. And that's, the same mindset for doing the HIITs when you're doing weight training or anything else. Now you don't have to, do HIIT training on a machine like on a treadmill or a cycling machine. You can do it out on the road. It's just you gotta keep an eye on your breathing and on your heart rate. So, say your cardio heart rate is, say, about 110 or so. That's kind of maybe your low end cardio. So what you want to do is, of course, time yourself for every 2 minutes of that, having your heart rate around, say, between like 110, 120. For every 2 minutes of that, you then do half a minute of getting your heart rate up to maybe 150, 170, something like that. Of course, with a Fitbit or a Garmin or a heart rate monitor, you can keep track and know what is your fat burn zone, what your cardio zone is, and what your peak zone is. But basically, with the HIITs, you want to get as close to, if not into, your peak heart rate as you can. Granted, if you're starting out on the lower end anyway, not very active, you're going to want to start out maybe having your heart rate in the fat burn zone for your lower intensity intervals, and then get up into your cardio for your higher intensity for a while, until you build up the strength and the endurance for your heart and your lungs to do that. Now, the other thing I know I keep mentioning with running, doing 2 minutes at the lower end and then half a minute at the higher end, and kind of doing it in that sort of interval. Reason behind that, or maybe a minute and a half and then half a minute. The reason I subscribe to that is I read a book about 80-20 training. What that is, basically, you are supposed to do 80% of your training at lower intensity, and then 20% at higher intensity. So that's why I do minute and a half to 2 minutes lower intensity, 7 miles an hour, and then half a minute of higher intensity, 9 miles an hour. Supposedly, in the book that I read, now I'm actually going to do a video about all the books that I recommend people look into, and this is one of the ones that I highly recommend. They go into the science and studies behind why they found that 80-20 is the best ratio for training. It's kind of involved for me to really go into it in a video like this right now. I could do it in the future. It's also been about 1.5 years since I read the book, if not longer. Might be even longer than 1.5 years, might be close to 2 years. But in any event, it's a really important thing to think about, so I highly recommend looking into that. There's a book for running, cycling, and triathlons, talking about the 80-20 interval, or 80-20 ratio. So, Like I said, I'll go into different books I recommend people read in another video. Maybe I'll do that for next week. But for now, I highly recommend doing high intensity interval training or HIITs, because I think they really help your training, getting your endurance up, getting your muscles stronger, and there's a lot of benefits to it, I think. Right now I'm doing a different kind of HIIT because I was working on getting myself from 6.5 mile an hour average pace on the treadmill to 7. So I would go from 6 miles an hour to 8 miles an hour, and then 7 to 9, doing the intervals I was discussing earlier. So 2 minutes at 6 miles an hour, half a minute at 8, bring it down to 7 miles an hour for 2 minutes, and then up to 9 for half a minute, then back down to 6. But it was hard for me to maintain that sometimes, because it got so that my 6 miles an hour, I basically wanted to run off the treadmill, and of course I couldn't. So I've changed my interval to doing 7 miles an hour for a minute, 8 miles an hour for half a minute, 9 miles an hour for half a minute, bring it back down to 8 for half a minute, and then back to 7 for a minute. I've gotten so that I can do that back and forth, up and down for half an hour. And that's been kind of my goal. Now that I've reached the goal, doing it for half an hour, my goal is to keep at it for a few weeks, get it so that I can just maintain 7 miles an hour and then bump up to 9 and do it that way. And then hopefully get my speed up so that maybe I can start trying to do 8 miles an hour and 10 miles an hour. So, but that's all for now. Before I go, I would like to send a shout out to my one elite patron, Jennifer. Thank you for your support. If you would like to become a patron, there's a link in the description. There's 3 tiers for it, and you get videos earlier than when I make them available on YouTube itself, along with some other perks, including these shout-outs like this. And yes, thank you so much, Jennifer, for your support. And again, if anyone else would like to become a patron, links in the description. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Remember, we're in it for the long run. Peace and love.